I've been a fan of your work for a long time, obviously, but a big part of what made me want to have you on the disc dive now to talk about your solo record is, some of those certain shades and colors that connect so vividly for me to the same stuff that was the same things that first turned me on, where nothing's ever going to hit you the same way that stuff hit you at the time and place where it did,
Right.
And just hearing some of that in there. So yeah, at what point, I guess, did you start to realize, hey, this stuff I'm writing is heading in a different direction and this feels like a different thing?
Early, I mean, I wrote a few of these things, a few of these tracks, and a few from Eat the Elephant in like 2014. There was a summer that my family was away. I set up a laptop in the kitchen, which I don't, I had a studio, but there was something that came out from just having this, you know, localized small setup that I wrote a bunch of things. And there was a few anchor songs, I would say, and Free and Weightless was one of them, that I just thought there's something here. And I kind of thought then, oh, I'll probably heavy it up, which is what I tend to do. It sounded like early demos of the First Ashes record, but the First Ashes record, had a much more electronic music, or influence from things I listen to more. I don't think I'd listen to stuff that sounds like Perfect Circle as much, but I don't know. Perfect Circle to me is a hybrid of many things. I know where the DNA comes from, but this record is closer to what maybe I listened to more, and certainly did growing up. A big part of it. And yeah, so some of those stuck around and became anchor songs for this record. But the real bulk of the recording of this was in 2019. I had some things in mind, but enough to be ready to go full force into making it. And so Danny and I started working on it in August of 19. I think is when I brought him in and really started going. And it was a full blast, insomnia ridden, just making a record. It was great. Did it all at my place, at my studio, drums, everything. Had somebody else mix. This guy Matty Green mixed it at his place, but other than that, everything was done here. And yeah, it's the record I always wanted to make. And I can listen back, and I have listened back to like early demos of like Enemies, let's say, or Too Late, and that was from the First Ashes record, and they much more fit within this record, now. So I kind of look forward to playing some of the Ashes songs on this new tour. You can say reimagine, but I could say like the first versions of them, before they got kind of put into a comfort zone. I think I stayed in a little bit of a comfort zone on the First Ashes record, musically. It was guitar, two guitars, bass, and drums, a little bit of keys. But this is the record that I think I always wanted to make, but didn't know how. I don't think I could have I know I could not have made this record certainly as a kid, but not even in 2000 or 2008. I couldn't have made the record that sounds like this. So I was happy to, I feel good about the way it sounds, honestly, like everything that's made me who I am musically today, it's kind of coming into focus and shape on this record, sonically too. I just think I really wanted a record that sounded good when you turned it up and didn't fatigue. There's something kind of hard to describe, certainly to a layman, if you play something for someone and it doesn't sound good, let's say, you turn it up, and it just sounds irritating, but you don't know why. Maybe it's distorted, maybe just like it's a shitty mix, or I just wanted to take away any of those distractions I could.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird, but I wanted to make sure a record that wasn't too bass heavy. I think like too many records are too muddy and sound like a fucking bowl of oatmeal or something.
Yeah, and everything's brick walled, and sometimes records are just rock records with just clipping in it.
So I went down a little bit of a deep dive with that, listening to what mastering engineers had to say about mastering, and like the loudness wars and all that nightmare era in music. And there was some records that really had turned me on in the past like 5 years that I just couldn't listen to. I'm like, why do I want to keep putting on these records? That and I can turn them up. And there's some things I hear that I like the songs, but I don't want to turn it up. It gives me a headache, or it just like sounds
Yeah.
brittle.
Yeah.
So that was, something I feel like I've learned a lot about sonics and engineering and frequency stacking, and that's it. But the biggest thing is to what's moving the song forward, what supports the narrative, where is my voice? I think on the first Ashes record, it's funny. I don't want to talk you out of it if you're listening to this, but it's not. It's me singing a character, but not me. You know, if you heard me, like I played Ashes Divide for my kids. One's 14, one's 18, 17, 18. And they can't recognize that. It's like not me. But if you hear this record, it's me. As you and I are talking, I think you could recognize my voice. So it's
Yeah.
like that was important to me, and it really played into, okay, it makes sense to use my name for this because I think it's the most honest representation of me singing in the most natural way I can.
And I love that. And there's nothing, it's not disparaging to say that it's a character, or maybe a better word would be persona, because a
Yeah,
lot of people adopt that for different
sure.
bands, especially in singing and things like that. And I think it's very cool that that is a way to differentiate. It certainly would have been stranger if the last record had been just out with your name and you're adopting this kind of persona as the front person, and then this was Ashes Divide. So it really kind of
Right.
worked out, as it was
Yeah.
supposed to. And I also
Yeah.
have to say, as a fan of language, I'm sure I don't imagine it was intentional, but I love that one song that was around for a long time and then found its way onto a record was Weak and Powerless. And then
Mhm.
another song that was around for a few years and found its way here was Free and Weightless.
Yeah. And
There's,
I've messed it up. I've
yeah.
messed it up probably 3 or 4 times already. And Danny Lohner, who worked with, we be talking about the song, and he'd go, "Yeah, we could powerless. We should, what do you think about not even?" And I do the same. He goes, "You did it again." I go, "I did it again? Oh my God, this is going to be embarrassing when it's
That's
pressed."
amazing. Well, full disclosure, I just glanced at the track listing to make sure I didn't mess it up when I said it to you. So
Yeah, yeah, all good, all
that's
good.
great. I think it's a nice there's symmetry to it.
Yeah,
I always appreciate that.
yeah, and I'm glad they don't sound exactly the same. That would be a real problem.
Yeah, we're not, this isn't like Unforgiven and Unforgiven 2. Not like the same chords or anything. Well, Billy, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, especially
Yeah,
in the middle of a busy moment like this. And yeah, as someone who loves Echo and the Bunnymen and The Cure, and I love hearing you talk about Kings of the Wild Frontier also, because that's
adventurous
things,
album.
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's the thing too. When playing, even for very well-rounded, very broad-minded music fans, when you expose someone to Adam and the Ants for the first time who has no idea what it is,
yeah.
so yeah,
And then tell them what year it came out and what was going on around music at that time, and say like, this somebody greenlit this, and this is like, oh my God, this is the most. When I say it's like a pirate album with Native American influence in the post-punk world, like what the hell does that sound like, right?
yeah, or yeah, or sometimes I've asked somebody like, "Do you remember that song I Want Candy?" Yeah, I'm like, well, it's that, but instead of a girl singing "I Want Candy," it's a guy going "ah, ah, ah." Yeah.
And the live show, man, you look out. Come on, I want to rip that live show off from 1980. That was
Oh my
amazing.
God, yeah. And some of the, I mean, and as much as the video killed the radio star, and as important as the music videos were the MTV era, I feel like that's been memory hold. Like people, we all think about like certain classic clips
Yeah,
from that time, but it's like, dude, Adam Ant was making classic clip after, I mean, Stand and Deliver, Prince Charming, Strip, the solo stuff, Apollo 9, and I mean, but I was a super fan, so I was watching the
yeah,
videos when they premiered, even if they didn't end up in
yeah.
rotation. But
Dude, MTV. We can only explain, but it never will land on a generation that didn't grow up with it. It's just, it was your North Star to look for what just came out. It was amazing.
I had the VCR ready for the first single from the second Aha record. Aha, famously a one-hit wonder in America and a massive success everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I grew up next to my best friends, two houses down. They had a Betamax. They were the first. Betamax came out first, right? And VHS replaced it, but Betamax was a better format. It just was a better. I don't exactly know what the disconnect there was or why VHS won out, but the older brother Tommy would record MTV and we'd have it. I remember the Bowie Ashes to Ashes video was the first video I saw on MTV, and I'll never forget it. Still, I mean, it's just this bizarre, trip. Clown being slowly chased by a bulldozer. I go like,
yeah,
and I'm like searching for the narrative there. Like, what's the, I wasn't a drug kid or drug guy. Like, I was like, how can my sober brain wrap around these details? I don't know what to do with this.
and especially and for the format to be so new and for people to just be discovering what it even was. So it was just people were doing anything and everything.
Yeah. Side note with Bowie, when I worked for Bowie, he asked me to play bass on a track. He got commissioned to write a song for something specific. I think it was for a commercial. And so I was tight. I worked for Reeves Gabrels, and he and Reeves, David and Reeves were really tight. So, I was lucky enough to share the lunch table with them at catering most days, on tour. And he said, come on, Billy, let's go and take into Metropolis in London to go and track. So I got to play some bass with David on a session. It was just he was such a gracious, awesome dude. But, it was like to grow up and not even the biggest Bowie fan. I wasn't tripping out where I couldn't be around him or look him in the eyes. It was just like a mad respect. Of course, loved what he did for music, but what he did for culture and what he was as a person. And I can say firsthand, he is as lovely and intelligent and engaging as he has seemed publicly. And what I got to know, little I got to know of him privately. But that was a cool moment because that was before APC. So it was a time not playing in front of people, but playing in front of an icon.
It literally gave me goosebumps as you're describing it. So
yeah, so as
incredible.
Little as that was, like a day in the studio was it was very cool. So
did you ever see his cameo on Extras, the Ricky Gervais?
No.
So Ricky Gervais is, a huge Bowie file. And I don't know if you've ever seen photos or music videos or anything from, Ricky Gervais was in a new wave band.
No.
Dude, he was in a two-person, Wham style Spandau Ballet, a very Bowie inspired band that was signed to a major label and, put out a record that flopped and got dropped, and then ended up years later working in an office, and in the office came up with the idea for the office. But Extras, which is I actually like even better than the office, is a show where he plays a struggling actor. I take forever describing it. You should 100% watch it because it's so great.
No, I've seen one clip. I've seen like a famous clip that I love and share all the time with Liam Neeson. I think it's Extras, right? Is that him when he's doing with
the Liam Neeson? No, that's Life's Too Short.
Yeah. Okay.
Where Liam Neeson's doing the I have AIDS. That one, yeah.
If I can endorse anything, everything I said is unimportant. Go and watch that.
Go and watch that clip, yeah. And there's great
talking about doing comedy.
There's great outtakes from the Liam Neeson clip from that too, where they can't get
really,
where they're Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais who just keep laughing at Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson's fine, but they keep breaking. But but there's a great bit where his character in Extras is in a club and David Bowie's there, and he somehow weasels his way into Bowie's little VIP area, and he's trying to talk to him, and Bowie's sitting by a piano, and he starts playing a song and singing a song about Ricky's character. And he's like, sad little fat man with a pug nose, and then just like, and he gets the whole bar singing the chorus. But yeah, anyway, watch that clip even if you don't watch the show, because it's
okay.
It really gives those kind of moments for people like him who are such icons. It really gives you a sense of like, here's this whole other side where this person just what you want him to be,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I get.
Well, dude, thanks again. I appreciate it again. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. We'll
Don't
be.
bore you with, but they're
I lost you for a second.
sorry, you just broke up for a second. What's that?
Oh, I was just saying thanks again for being so generous with your time, and
Yeah.
I'll be sure to let the powers that be know when this goes up, and we usually break them up into episodes, so it'll be like a couple records, per video. And
Yeah.
yeah, cheers and best of luck and all the success with this record. It's really cool. It's really cool to have a record like this now. And
Thank you. Yeah, it's confusing in this year. Like I said, it's easy. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can make a record like this. Now, promoting a record like this in this time, not like this, just any record. Like, I don't know. So thank you very much for spreading the word.
oh, happy to, very, very happy to, man. And yeah, I think I'm going to be going to Cruel World on Sunday. So I'll be.
Dude, I don't have time, but I gotta go. That's something I can't miss. Right.
I mean, dude, Missing Persons, and I mean, there's just
Yeah.
the lineup is.
Missing Persons. I mean, Warren Cucurillo, or however you pronounce his name. I'm like, that's one of my favorite guitar players. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. Huge. Like, that's why I play like I play, is that guy. Like deconstructing how he made synth sound like guitars and vice versa. Like that's a big influence for this record in particular. I want to confuse the listener. Like I want to confuse myself after I've heard it for a while. Like, I don't know where it starts and stops, the synths and the guitars. And I think Missing Persons was an amazing, they were trailblazers in that kind of way. Just a great band.
Yeah. And I'm a huge I'm a Morrissey guy. So
yeah. Me too. I grew up on the Smiths big time. I mean, yeah.
And Morrissey's solo also with me growing up in Indiana. There's the video where he's in Fairmont, going to like James Dean's elementary school and writing on the walls and riding the tractor around and stuff like that. And yeah, for us Morrissey nerds.
Well, I got a Morrissey story quick about, he opened for Bowie. I don't know if you know this, but so when I worked for Bowie, worked for Reeves, but for Bowie tour, Morrissey opened up. We're in the UK, and he left the tour, like literally left the tour in the middle of, like, before a show one day. So took the bus and just left, and the band was on stage rehearsing, ready for him to come up for sound check, and he was gone. So wild. I mean, like, I was a huge Smiths fan, and I would so enjoy just seeing them play. Right. I didn't even want to meet him because he just seemed maybe like a guy that I didn't want to meet, but I wanted to keep some rock stars. You want to just keep in boxes, right?
Let the mystique be there.
Yeah. But then who did they get to replace it? But a band which you probably, I don't know if you've heard of, or other people have, Electrofiction, which was Will Sargent from Echo and the Bunnymen and Ian. Wow. So it was basically Echo and the Bunnymen, but with a new name, a slightly different twist, barely. It was great.
I'll have to check that out, because that's off my radar. Wow.
And I loved that record. I had the record, and I listened to it. I could not believe they showed up the next day and just like took over for the Morrissey slot. And I remember just being at catering, sitting across from me, and like, now him I was tripping out on. I mean, I was tripping out on Bowie, but like tripping out on him, and he's tripping out like, can you give me access to David? Like I started smoking because of that motherfucker, or whatever it was he was saying. Like, oh yeah, I was whatever, a 25-year-old kid just freaking out because from a young age I was like into Echo and the Bunnymen, like from the age of 12. So yeah, very, very cool. I've been very lucky to have access to a couple of these situations.
Incredible. Yeah. And Morrissey is so obscure. I for about 10 years I used to manage a band called Tiger Army, and 2005 we were doing 5 nights at the House of Blues on Sunset, and one of the nights was Morrissey's birthday, and guys in the band like myself were big Morrissey fans, and they did a cover of The Loop. And the idea was that, before they played it, they were going to say, it's Morrissey's birthday and whatever. Well, the show starts, and I'm in the balcony at the House of Blues, and Morrissey sits down. he decided to spend his birthday coming to the House of Blues on Sunset and watching Tiger Army, unbeknownst to our whole camp.
Awesome.
So he's sitting there, he's got a bucket of Coronas. He had these two guys with him and a girl, and they're all dressed like, not suits, but like, colored, but like they were all like super nice. And I'm just like standing there and I'm like, there's fucking Moz. And then I'm thinking like, well, I'm the worst manager in the world if I don't at least try to get him in the dressing room.
Mhm.
So my move was, instead of just approaching, and nobody had noticed him yet either, which was also the great thing, because eventually he was noticed. Instead of approaching Moz, I went to the girl that was with him because she looked nice. And I kind of leaned in. I was like, hey, I'm the band's manager. And then I said something to that effect of like, I'd be the worst manager in the world if I didn't at least ask if you guys want to come meet the band afterwards. And she leans over to him and I see him kind of give the nod. And I'm like, so I'm like grabbing security and trying to like work out, like getting him an escort to, and yeah, so the second the band was done, got him back into the dressing room, and the band hasn't made their way off stage to the dressing room yet. So there's this kind of amazing, surreal moment of, it's just me and a friend of mine and Morrissey and his little entourage sitting in the dressing room.
Nice.
And House of Blues has all the religious iconography and all that. There's like a chair in the dressing room that can really only be described as like a throne.
Mhm.
It just was like some weird House of Blues chair. He sat in that naturally. Everybody sat around him. And then it was just kind of this awkward, like, we're just kind of hanging out. And then it was a pretty amazing moment when the band comes in off stage and Morrissey's sitting there.
Right.
So yeah, so they talked and we took pictures and whatever. And so long story short, I went to his manager at the time, which was Merciatus, who was doing Axl and Elton John and Morrissey at that time. Which, wow, that's a job. And I went to him and was, we came to see the band. We'd love to, if we could ever play some shows with them. So he did a couple of shows that were warm-ups for South by Southwest, played those shows. The bands didn't really interact, but Tiger Army, opened for Morrissey at these two shows. And then got the call after that of Morrissey's touring the UK and Europe. Would you guys like to support on that? And I was like, amazing, incredible. Yeah, of course, absolutely. So do all that. They go over, the band plays two shows. And after two shows, Morrissey's tour manager comes to our tour manager and says, hey guys, just want to let you know your services will no longer be needed. And nice. The band's like, what? And they're in the UK, they've only done two shows of what's supposed to be like a 5-6 week tour.
Oh my God.
And they're like, what did we offend him somehow? Did we, what did we do? What happened? And the TM said, I'm not authorized to discuss it. I was just told to have your management call ours. So,
but it has something to do with the BLT. But other than that, I don't know.
Exactly. And so this is the crazy thing, man, is like this was a Friday night and whatever. And I just bought a house and my ex and I were having her parents over to dinner for the first time. It's super late. I get this call. Anyway, I ended up talking to this guy, Jed, who worked with Merck, because I got an email from Merck that said I'm putting Axl on stage in New York. It's an email I'll never forget. So he couldn't talk. Talk to this guy, Jed, and he just tells me, he's like, hey, your guys were perfect gentlemen. They're very professional. The band is great. You're great. Everyone's great. It's just not the right vibe. And I'm like going and trying to, get some sort of explanation. And there was never any explanation other than, and he was like, this comes from the top down. So it was like Morrissey just decided it wasn't the right vibe. So again, long story short, I was able to get them to pay us for the missed shows, which was nice. So that happened.
Yeah.
And then Jerry Finn, who had done a bunch of Morrissey's records, did one of our records, like, rest in peace. And we asked Jerry if he could find out for us, and he got the same answer we did. It just wasn't the right vibe. So again, so last but not least, the end of this story is that years later, Morrissey was doing like 11 nights at the Palladium, and our agent got an email from Morrissey's agent asking if Tiger Army wanted to open one of the shows at the Palladium. And so I called the agent myself and was just like, hey man, normally I wouldn't even make this phone call, but I just want to, maybe you don't know. I was like, I just want to explain this thing to you that happened a few years ago and understand how weird it is for us to get this request. And we're not gonna do it, but we love him. And the guy said, if you saw the list of bands he gave me, you wouldn't think this is weird. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I'm looking at the list right now. Tiger Army, Everlast, Alien Ant Farm. And then he's like, you see where I'm going here? It's like, okay. So that was that. That's my Morrissey story.
Wow.
And we didn't do that show, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, just never,
Wow.
no idea. Nobody knows what happened.
Yeah.
And everyone swears up and down that everything's cool, everything's great. There was no problem.
Right.
He just decided after 2 shows that they weren't the right vibe. And then I don't know if you remember that girl, Christine Young, was somebody that was on his label that he was like producing or something that his fans hated. He put her on and she did the rest of that tour. But anyway, yeah.
Crazy.
And I'm a huge fan. I have Morrissey lyric tattoos. I'm happy to just not know him.
Yeah. Man, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Have a good rest of your day, man. And yeah, take care.
All right, take care.